All right, you want to lose 30 pounds in 90 days? Yeah, I bet. Who doesn't? You want to do it and you want it to be extremely easy. Of course. I can do this. I can make this happen. I can even show you. But the reality is, you know you, and I have a feeling I know you too. But anyway, welcome to Walk Talk Vent. Let's do this.
Hi guys, welcome back. Today we're going to visit with Daria Kropop, and the name of Daria's video is called How I Got Fat, The Truth About My Weight Gain. I've watched a couple minutes of this, but I didn't want to watch the whole thing without you guys. That way we could watch it together. There's one little theme here that Daria has that I want to make sure that you listen for because I'd like to talk with you about it as we watch the video. She kind of blames her weight gain a little bit on her parents, but the story she says, in my mind, doesn't quite match up because the story she's saying makes her parents sound like they're a little bit on the cruel side. But what I'm hearing is that the parents actually loved the heck out of their daughter. So tell me what you think. You and I might totally disagree on this. But with that being said, I'm going to be quiet now. Let's listen to Daria.
You were probably wondering, how did I get to that weight? You must be thinking, oh, did you notice when you were starting to gain weight? Valid questions. Thank you for asking. I always liked food and I always liked eating. And I used food as a coping mechanism to what was happening in my life. At first, I was not gaining weight because I was a kid and I was actually a skinny kid. And 90s and early 2000s were horrible for body image. I think this is what totally fucked us up. My mom was on like constant diet. She was doing cleanses. I remember she was on this one diet that you basically eat cabbage soup for I think every meal. That was insane. And I remember she was trying to get me on that as well. Like, what? And then she's doing, I think it's called Copenhagen diet, which is insane. I think you like for breakfast, you basically have like a cup of coffee and that's it. I don't know how any of us turned normal.
So I will admit that back in the day, there was fad diet after fad diet after fad diet. But the truth is, that's the same way it is nowadays. You guys all know that. And here's an interesting thing. When she tells me that her mom was on the cabbage soup diet and on some diet called the Copenhagen diet, you guys might listen to that and think, yeah, that might not be too good for a young girl to grow up in, a mom that's constantly doing one diet to another. But what my brain hears is totally different. What I hear is it sounds like mom was always trying to do some self-improvement. Guys, there's nothing wrong with you wanting to do a diet, even if it fails. The key is that you don't give up. You might be vegan one day, carnivore the next, Mediterranean diet the next. My thinking is as long as your brain is always trying to think ahead and do something about your weight, that's a good thing. So that's where I differ from the modern day mind. The modern day mind always looks for a way to find a negative out of everything. Back in the day, there was a lot of negative stuff. So we had to look for the silver lining in dark clouds. That's a different mindset. We believed that we could lose weight. Nowadays, we believe that, we're stuck where we are and we can't do anything about it. Now, you tell me which way is a better way to think.
90s was all about heroin chic and Kate Moss. If you didn't look like you were starving, you were fat. And then in 2000, you had Paris Hilton, the Olsen twins, Lindsay Lohan, Nicole Richie. Do you remember how skinny they were? In 2000, you're supposed to be very, very skinny, but not too skinny, but also you shouldn't have any body fat. I vividly remember when they were calling Jessica Simpson fat. Look at that. Was she fat there? No, she wasn't. But that was because of the
I agree with you that she was not fat there. I think we can all agree that Jessica was not fat there. But you want to know something? She wasn't skinny. And a lot of us back in the day were skinny. And a lot of the people that were Jessica Simpson's age, that looked like she was what, 22 or 23? There are a lot of 22 and 23-year-olds that used to be naturally skinnier than that. So when they look at Jessica, and even Jessica there was about 15 or 20 pounds heavier than she was just a year or two earlier, if you guys remember. And again, the reason people used to call people fat was because everyone used to be skinny. Somewhere in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, we started eating out nonstop and getting to the point where we are now, where 4 out of 5 of us are obese. The problem is not the way we were. The problem is the way we are now. And that's the difference between back then when people thought, hey, with hard work, willpower, and dedication, I can fix myself. And now we look for a magic pill to fix us because we're constantly bombarded with people that say we can't fix it. So you tell me, what mindset is the better one? The one we used to have, where there was a little tough love and people actually tried harder? Or the one we're in now, where people are looking for a magic cure all the time?
Fat when I was growing up. Also, Hilary Duff, they were fat shaming her all the time. Well, the word fat shaming I don't think existed back then. Being thin was the most important thing. I remember this quote, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. Anorexia and bulimia were trendy. I remember going on Tumblr and there was so much like pro-ana and thinspiration. What the F is thinspiration? Being extremely skinny was trendy. And I remember if you didn't have visible collarbones, you were fat. If you didn't have a thigh gap, you were fat. And I remember at school, we were like looking at our wrists if we were skinny enough. And then all the movies, Bridget Jones, she was like 130 pounds and she was considered fat. And I remember me watching this movie for the first time. I was like, oh my gosh, she's so fat because the movie told me that. And now I would kill to be 130 pounds.
So once again, when you look at Bridget Jones there or whatever, I forget her name in real life. It's on the tip of my tongue, right? From Jerry Maguire. But when you look at her, she was skinnier a couple years earlier. And the only reason that she was fat there is because everybody used to be skinny. Now everybody's fat. So we look back in retrospect and we say, what the heck? Marilyn Monroe was the same way. You guys know she was considered like a plus size model, but she was also considered like the most beautiful woman in Hollywood back then, because even though she was a little overweight, she looked good. So no matter what weight you are, whether you're a man or a woman, you can still look stunning, right? But the thing is, I'm telling you, we've gone through a time warp. The reason people that used to think that 140-pound girls were fat is because girls used to be 125 back in the day. Now they're 175 and they wish they were 140. I'm telling you, it's the twilight zone, the world we live in.
She was not fat at all. That is insane. And in Devil Wears Prada, we were convinced that Anne Hathaway was big. Excuse me. Do you remember the movie franchise Bring It On? I don't remember which movie that was. That was the one with the Hayden Panettiere. And in her squad, there was a girl that everyone said that it's fat and she needs to talk to her because she's gained weight. It was absolutely ridiculous. I legit thought that this is true. And do you remember Sex and the City? I think that was the first movie when Samantha came to visit and they were making comments about her gut and they were making comments about how she gained weight. And she said she didn't notice. And Carrie was like, oh, Samantha, I'm gonna say that with love or something like that. How could you not? Apparently, Kim Cattrall didn't even have to gain weight for that scene. They just squeezed her into clothes that they were too small for her. And they make such a big deal about her being fat and gaining so much weight and she has a gut now. This messes up so much. Like that definitely ruined my body image because when I look back, I was relatively very thin, but then something switched in my head and I was thinking, oh my God, I'm so fat. I remember even thinking that the people at school, they're friends with me because they feel sorry for me because I'm so fat. And I look like this. But then I started to hear the same.
I've never met one human being that has ever just hung out with somebody because they feel sorry for you. Now, when they're pissed at you, they might call you chubby and say, I only hang out with you because I feel sorry for you. But that's because you just got them irritated. Here's a question I have for you. I'm a medium-sized guy trying to find my way back to 160 pounds. I'm drinking water. Out of every 100 overweight people right now, there's probably 10 of you drinking a Coke. If you're drinking a soda right now while watching this video about this girl describing how she got fat, please admit it in the comments.
At home. I remember this very popular saying when I was growing up. Oh, you're not hungry, you're just thirsty, drink some water. And then my family started saying to me that I need to be more careful of what I'm eating because I'm going to gain fat and I'm getting a little bit chubby now. And I remember this was the time when all this those crazy diets were popular. And I remember I started with this apple diet when you eat only apples for like 5 days. Now from the perspective of like 2023, that seems ridiculously insane.
No, actually, it doesn't seem ridiculously insane. It sounds much better than the lemon diet. It sounds much better than the egg diet. It sounds much better than the eat nothing but bacon diet, right? Eat nothing but sardines. There's nothing silly about it. We're doing more fad diets now than we ever have. It's because back in the day, and by the way, that was the point I wanted you to hear. Did you hear how her parents meanly said, you got to be careful. You're going to start to get chunky. That's not mean at all. That's how parents tell you lovingly, get the Twinkie out of your mouth. But again, we grow up, this world right now is so where the kids are raised up to, we are so wimpy with our kids, right? Daria, I hate to tell you this. Your mom was being the best friend in the world to you. She just came across the wrong way. But you know what? When you're talking to your daughter and your daughter is still a size 4, like Daria says she was, still pretty skinny, how is that being cruel telling your skinny daughter, be careful what you eat? I think what her mom did was giving her some love there. If you think I'm crazy and you think I'm a jerk, don't get mad at me. Tell me in the comments. Let's talk about it.
Insane. But that was the reality. And my brother, he actually struggled with weight as a child. He was put on a diet, which me now thinking about it, the calories were way too low. It's like 11 or 12,000 calories for a growing child. And I decided then, brainwashed by all the media and the family, that I'm fat, so I need to go on a diet as well. I was on the same diet as him, and I was so hungry all the time. And I remember when the diet ended, something switched in my head and I was never the same. I think I was basically starved, and then I was craving everything. I was always hungry and I was eating so much and I could never be full. And that's when I started binging, I think. And I felt horrible. I had relatively good childhood and I love my parents and I was a happy child, but all of that, I took it very internally and I started coping with food.
I believe she just said, my parents loved me, parents plural, so mom and dad was there. That's the best thing you can do if you love your kids. Try to stay together, right? She said she was very happy as a child. She was skinny. I think her mom and dad loved her like crazy. I think so many of our parents do. Just sometimes they don't know how to put the words together. Could you imagine if anybody else on in the planet blamed everything about their own personal life on you? That's what we do to our parents all the time. It's one of the most horrible things, and I think it's perpetuated by psychiatrists and psychologists. The first thing they do when you sit on their couch is they want to tell you how you're the way you are because of how screwed up your parents were. And it's just not that it's not true.
And I remember coming home from school, I was going to a shop and I was buying like biscuits and stuff. And I was eating all of it in one go, like hidden in my room. And then I said I was going for a walk to just like dispose of the evidence because I felt so ashamed. The food felt like a warm hug. I cannot explain that, but that was like what I was escaping to. And that's how I learned to like regulate my emotion by eating. And sadly, that stuck to me to this day. And then the more my family was telling me that I was gaining weight and I need to stop eating, the more I would eat, because that was like a vicious cycle of me gaining weight and then them being mean to me about that. And me trying to like deal with those feelings and deal with those emotions.
Again, she says that her parents were trying to tell her that she needed to stop eating so much that she's gaining weight. There is no nice way of saying that. The evil thing is indifference. When your parents don't say anything as you eat your third or fourth dessert item, that is a lack of love. When you actually speak up and tell your friends, hey, I think you're drinking too much, I think you're going to lose your family, you're actually helping them. When you say, Edith, you drink because your husband's a jerk, right? You're not helping anything, okay? A lot of times the problem is you. And if you can change the person in the mirror, that's why I always have the man in the mirror conversation with you guys, because the problems are not the world's. The problems are our own. And you have to stop blaming all your problems on Karen and Dale and mom and dad. And what you really need to do is look internally, because 90% of the time, the problem's probably you. Don't hate me. I'm just the messenger.
I would just eat more. And because of that, I missed out on so many things. Like in high school, I was still kind of normal weight, I'd say. I was overweight, but I was not obese. And then I think when I went to uni and I was left alone, and then I didn't know how to like deal with my emotions in like real world, then I started gaining more and more. And then I moved to America. I was the same. I lost a little bit of weight when I came back home after living in America for 2 years. But then now when I moved to Scotland, I've gained a lot. Within 4 years, like 4.5, I think I've gained like 60 pounds, which is absolutely mad. I think I need some help on that.
She does need some help. And in high school, she had it in the form of parents that loved her. But again, because we're constantly told by our best friend Becky how how our parents are such jerks and hey, let's run away and let's go, party with the boys, right? And before you know it, all those problems that you should probably attribute to friends like Becky, you're all of a sudden attributing it to the parents that love you more than anybody else. And notice whether she moves to America or Scotland, the farther Daria got away from her parents, the more weight she put on because nobody else was telling her, quit eating.
That front. And when I realized how much weight I've gained in such a short amount of time, mind you, this whole time I was actually actively trying to lose weight and I was actively in therapy and I'm doing all the things. Like I was speaking about this with my therapist the other day and she said she specializes in eating disorders and she has a lot of patients that struggle the same as I do. And she said, I'm the only one who's this resilient. A lot of people just give up. And I honestly tried to find new solutions to my problem. Like I've been through so many dietitians and I'm doing therapy. I was on different diet. I was on meal plans. I'm counting calories. I have personal trainer. I'm doing it all and it doesn't work for me. And it is working, but I have not weighed myself in like 3 weeks. I'm going to do that on Monday. But still, it's up and down. I can be doing amazingly for like 4 or 5 days and then something happens or like weekend comes and I can just not control it and I'm hungry all the time. Even though I eat enough calories and I eat enough protein. I have an appointment with endocrinologist in a few weeks, so we're going to see about that. But yeah, that's how I get fat. And I know it's not great and I'm missing out on so many things. When I was in uni, all the people had their boyfriends and they were going on dates and I wasn't. Men were not interested in me when I was in uni. And I was so shy and I was so like self-conscious that I wasn't even putting myself in that situation. So I've never been on a date. I think the first time I went on a date when I was like 23. I know I'm being very vulnerable here.
She's got a lot of things going for her, but a lot of the problems that she has, she's blaming it on the wrong person. If you want to blame it on the 90s grunge era, fine. We all grew up in that and we were literally told that being skinny and looking like you're drugged out is sexy, right? So I can see you blaming it on that. You can even blame it on culture. Maybe your classmates and stuff made fun of you and called you the fat girl, which they probably didn't, at least not to your face, right? But again, who do we blame most? We blame the people that love us the most. You heard her yourself. She said she had a happy childhood. She was a size 4 growing up, 4 American. I guess that's 8 European. Her parents tried warning her before she got big, because that's the key to being a good friend and being somebody that you love and being loving to a family member. You got to warn them. But what do we do as family members, especially as kids? We rebel against our parents. And then we go the rest of our lives being angry at them. Anyway, if you guys hate me, I love you. Go grab your shoes anyway. Let's go for a walk. Okay, guys, Mala and I have decided that for the last 30 days of this 90-day challenge, we're going to make an effort to stop eating at 7:30 p.m. So if you think you're up to the challenge with us, please let us know in the comments. And if you're going to step it up in another way over the next 30 days, again, let us know. With that being said, I can do this, you can do this, we can do this, let's do this. Welcome to Walk, Talk, Vent.
Good morning, Venters. I hope you guys are having a nice Tuesday. It's always interesting being a day behind you guys, which I guess is the way it has to be unless I went live, but I don't even know if you can go live too far away from your home or if you have to have a special phone to do that. Either way, I kind of like being a day behind. But what that means is on my Mondays, it's your Tuesday, so happy Tuesday. I hope you guys are having a wonderful start to your week. Hopefully Monday went well for you. Hopefully you were able to walk before work today and yesterday. And hopefully even on Mother's Day, you guys were able to get in a little walk. Wouldn't that be cool if you guys went to see your mom and actually went with your mom for a walk? What a great thing to do. What a great family tradition. You know, sometimes we might have a situation where we babysit our kids, or not our kids, but our grandkids, or we might have little ones that haven't quite went to school yet, or maybe they have some sort of half-day situation. You know, it wouldn't be a bad idea to start a tradition of walking your kids to school. At first they'll hate it. They'll be like, no, let's take the car. But just remember, if you can get them loving walking at an early age, like kids used to do, they should be a little bit healthier than if you decide to drive them all the time. You know, some kids are going to be skinny regardless because, you know, sometimes some of us are just skinny while we're young, right? But the reality is all the kids used to be skinny because they all used to walk. And it's really weird. Neighborhoods have more cars than people, it seems like. It's almost like a ghost town out here every day before school because I just rarely see kids walking anymore. Now, is there a chance that your neighborhood is different? Yeah, I suppose. I would hope it's different in your neighborhood and maybe a ton of kids walk in your neighborhood. But if that's the case, you can do a little experiment. Take a look at the kids as they walk by your house on their way to school. Are the ones walking in pretty good shape? Because if they are, you have to wonder how come the kids that aren't in such good shape aren't walking. And if you are one of those teenagers or something that isn't in the best shape, but you do walk every day, I apologize. I know there's always exceptions to the rule, but when I was in school, I walked every single day, and I was one of these guys that I couldn't gain weight for the life of me. But looking back now, the reason I probably couldn't gain weight is because I was walking about 2 miles a day just to get to my school, you know? And what's interesting is when you're young and there is no internet like there wasn't when I was in high school, I didn't really know the proper way to gain weight. Every single person you spoke to had a different idea. Nobody told me, you know, why don't you eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich right before you go to bed? You know, why don't you try to get some more bread inside of you, right? Because I think we all know that if you eat a ton of bread or a ton of sugar, you're probably going to gain weight, and it won't necessarily be muscle, but if you're lifting weights every day like I was back then, you know, you probably would be in great shape and still be able to keep your weight up. I was in a situation in high school, believe it or not, my freshman year, I was 122 pounds, and my senior year, 4 years later, I graduated at about 130 pounds. So we're talking from freshman to senior year, I only gained like 8 pounds. Now that changed as I got a little bit older, into my early 20s and stuff. I slowly but surely got up to 145 pounds. And then somewhere in my late 20s, I got up into the 160s, 170s, 180s, all the way up to 200 pounds when my wife was pregnant with my son. But oh my goodness, that 200 pounds, it was amazing how chunky and big I had gotten. As a matter of fact, we had some camcorder video of that time, and I don't know where it went to, otherwise I'd show it to you. But basically, it's me with my son when he was like 1 year old. And we went to my mom's house, and we were videotaping, and there was me on the videotape, and I just looked like a big ball of whatever, you know, a big ball of who gives a poop, right?
And I was just really shocked. And even when we were watching it, and we were watching it like 15, 20 years ago, my mom would say, God, I can't believe how big you were at that time. But from what I understand, a lot of people go through the sympathy weight situation where, you know, their wife might gain 30, 40, 50 pounds during pregnancy, and they end up eating many of the similar foods, and they end up gaining the weight too. If you're a guy that's ever experienced gaining weight along with your wife when she was, you know, going through a pregnancy, let us know. And if you're a woman that went through a pregnancy once upon a time and maybe your spouse or significant other gained weight right alongside with you, let us know in the comments. That's one interesting thing about relationships, right? Sometimes you find out in life there's these weird little things, because the sympathy weight thing is very real. A lot of men gain weight while their wives or girlfriends are pregnant with their children. So one of the things that we can do as a couple is we can say, hey, you know, it's normal for pregnant women to gain weight because they're obviously eating for two, but they're not eating for two adults, you know. They're eating for themselves and a little baby, right? So one of the things you could do to maybe counteract the weight and stuff, and it probably wouldn't be a bad idea, I'm sure many of your doctors would applaud it, it would probably be good for you and your significant other to start a little bit of a walking routine. You know, whenever you're trying to get anything into your daily routine, you have to kind of plan. I think what happens is a lot of people say, you know what, I'm going to start walking, and then they just go about their day and kind of forget about it, and it never quite happens, right? With walking, there's never a better time than right now. And listen, I've met a lot of people throughout life that they would love to get a gym membership, but they don't really want to work out alone. They would love to start walking around their neighborhood, but it's really hard for them to get motivated to do stuff by themselves. So what I urge you to do is contemplate having me as your walking partner. So if you're brand new listening today for the first time, and you're thinking, what's this guy talking about? What's this channel? Why do people watch this channel? The reason some people watch, not all, but some people watch because they want to start a walking routine, and they find that sometimes it's easier to walk when you know somebody's walking with you. The only problem with that is when you look at when I walk, nobody's out and about walking. It's like a ghost town out here, just a bunch of cars, no people, right? And so when people want to walk, you have two choices. You can find someone to walk with you and hope that they're okay with it, right? Or you can just start walking by yourself. But if you're a real social person and you really don't like doing too many activities alone, you're going to need a walking partner. So my thinking is, I'm your guy, you know? I've been walking since I was a young kid. I walked all throughout grade school, walked all throughout junior high, and instead of taking the bus and gaining weight like I wanted to in high school, I ditched the bus and walked to school. You know, you walk far when you're ditching the bus, you know? But it was one of those things where I knew my walk to school was about half hour or so, and I would meet up with my buddy Chris. Yeah, the same buddy that ditched out on my wedding, but we were best friends throughout all of high school. And I would walk over to the park that's kind of between his house and the school. I would meet him there, and then we would walk to school together for the last half mile or so. And that was my life for 4 years, and all 4 years, I was wondering why the heck I couldn't gain any weight. As I got older, I had patches where I didn't walk as much. And when I got my wife pregnant, I gained a lot of sympathy weight. So what I found is a situation where in my mid-20s, around 26 or 27, I went to see my doctor at the time, Dr. Turner. He ran a series of blood tests because I think he thought I was getting quite round, you know. And he told me back then that my cholesterol numbers were kind of through the roof. Now, he wasn't one of these doctors that just immediately said, let's get this guy on a statin. I think his thinking was, hey, let's play this by ear, but let's see if you can get your weight down, and let's see if you can get your cholesterol in a more healthy range. And what that started was a
reintroduction of walking. So I went from age probably 23 to 27 where I didn't really walk too much, right? And it was during that time that I actually went from like 145-ish, 150-ish, all the way up to the 200 to coincide with my wife's pregnancy with my son. And so that's kind of something that always interests me, because I know for a fact when I don't walk, when I eat poorly, and oh my God, we ate well during her pregnancy, but when I don't walk and I eat poorly, I do gain weight. And it didn't take me till my 30s or 40s for that to happen. That started happening in my mid-20s. So what I'd like for you to ponder is the idea that you might be in your 40s or 50s, but your daughter and son, who are in their early 20s and very skinny and fit, they might be in a situation like I was, where before you know it, over the next couple of years, they might be gaining a lot of weight. Because maybe they're no longer in high school, maybe they're no longer in college where they're walking across the campus every day, you know? Maybe they're in a situation where they're starting to get a 9-to-5 job. And in most 9-to-5 jobs for people, a lot of times they're sitting at a desk, you know? I don't know if you can see that guy on the motorcycle that went by, but he looks like a 300-pound man on a motorcycle. Looks a little off-putting. Not used to seeing guys that big on bikes. I know one thing: when motorcycles and cars get in accidents, it doesn't fare well for the motorcyclist. And that guy probably has a weird center of gravity being that big on that bike. But I'm not a motorcyclist. There's probably plenty of overweight guys on bikes all the time that do just fine. God, I can still hear that motorcycle. Some vehicles are very fun, but very annoying to people. You know, I'm one of these guys that I can wake up real easily. So whenever I hear a vehicle cruising through the neighborhood being as loud as it possibly can be, I just feel like they're pushing a lot of bad mojo into the world. Because what you're really saying is, I'm awake, I could care less if you're asleep, you know? And I think that's what happens in life. I think a lot of times when life happens, we just kind of look at things from our own point of view. We forget there's other people out there in the world, you know, that might not want to hear our motorcycle all the time. And I don't have problems with guys like this one that drive through and they're having fun. But my God, if you know your vehicle is super duper loud, which that one was loud, but not too bad. But if you know your vehicle's super loud, and you know, if you like to play your music really loud as you go through a neighborhood, and it's only 5, 6, 7 in the morning, it's like, God, you're literally waking people up. Do you have to be that selfish all the time, you know? Like I said, I have this guy that has one of these really nice, expensive big boy motorcycles, right? And he drives through the neighborhood at 5 and 6 in the morning blaring his music. It's really, really odd. And I don't know where he lives, because I would be the type that would say, hey, turn those love songs off. Nobody wants to be turned on this early in the morning, you know? Nobody needs to hear your love songs. That's what's funny. You would think it would be some guy blaring rap music or something, right? Or heavy metal, or just something loud and annoying. But God, I like love songs, don't get me wrong. Everybody loves a little Chicago, or, you know, a little Air Supply or whatever. But my God, I don't want to hear how you're all out of love at 5 in the morning. I'm really excited. We're heading into our final month. I'm starting to feel all the old feelings that I did when I weighed much less than I do now. What are those feelings, Jesse? Tell us about your feelings. Well, feelings are nothing major, but my arms move really well. If I didn't have a camera, I would probably be swinging my arms like crazy, right? But it's hard to swing your arm when you're holding this 30-pound camera. But yeah, I'm starting to get to the point where I just don't crave many foods anymore. And it's weird, you know, if somebody came up to me and said, God, you know, I'm not really hungry anymore, you know, your natural thought is, are you sick? What's wrong with you? But in my case, you know, I'm very much capable of eating everything in the fridge and everything in sight, right? But what happens is when you stop eating sugar and you add the element of time to that, you're just going to get to the point where your appetite's not as voracious. If some of you guys have been walking with me now for multiple months, let me know, do you remember your appetite being this way? Is it still voracious? Do you still get mad hunger pains? Or are you starting to feel the same side effects I am, where you feel like your body's a little bit more athletic, the clothes are not only fitting you better, but more importantly, you're not necessarily as hungry all the time? You know, sometimes when we find a new hobby, it's really easy to dive into it. You know, some people like putting together model airplanes or model vehicles, you know, little cars and stuff. Some people like to collect Coca-Cola memorabilia or John Deere memorabilia. There's a million things you can do as a hobby or a scrapbookist that's into crafts, right? A lot of women love doing crafts and scrapbooking and stuff like that. All those things are fun and a great way to help your mental health because you have something to do, an outlet, right? But none of those really compare to walking. If you can get to the point where, in addition to your scrapbooking, you like to take a daily walk or two, those are things that are not only going to help your mental outlook, but they're going to really start to change your body and transform it. I think we need to remember that whenever we go through a body transformation, it takes a little time. And this is one of those weird plans where even if you avoid sugar, drink water, and walk, you might see YouTube videos of people that lost 15 or 20 pounds in a month, but the average person's probably going to lose closer to 4 or 5 their first month. Maybe they get to the point where they lose 7 or 8 or 9 after month 2, or through month 2, I should say. But it's also one of those neat things where, at least for me, usually after month 2, my body's actually somewhat transformed. For example, I'm a 175 pounder now rather than a 185 pounder. And as a 175 pounder, not only do my clothes fit better, but my head is starting to say, hey, I'm getting skinnier. So I think what we're going to start to see is some amazing stuff. I plan on taking it up another notch. Yesterday I told you guys, hey, what if we start in this last month, start shutting off the food supply at 7:30 in the evening, or basically when the sun goes down? Because if we can get to a point where we, from 7:30 to maybe 10:30, don't eat, go to sleep, wake up, take our walk, come home, eat breakfast or delay breakfast till maybe lunch, guys, we're going to start really losing a lot of weight in an amazing amount of time. In other words, in the next 30 or 40 days, right? And the best way that we can make that happen is by trying to see if it's possible. So my thinking is, I think what I'm going to do, whether you guys do it or not, is I think I'm going to go ahead and turn off the food valve at 7:30. Let's see if that helps take me to that next level. And the way we'll know that is, I'll keep you posted on it. But here's my thinking. I'm going to do this for probably the last month of this 90-day challenge. I'm wondering if you'd like to do it with me. So imagine, if you will, you're not on a walk by yourself. You're on a walk with Jesse. You and I are walking shoulder to shoulder, right? And I'm telling you, I want to do this. Do you think we should do this for this last month? If you're game, let's do it. We still treat it like a 2/3 rule. If you end up eating past 7:30 in the evening, we don't trip. You don't have to ask the Lord for forgiveness or anything crazy. You simply just try it the next day again, you know? Because if you and I can get to a point where we're only eating when the sunlight's out, and we're only eating from a point of not being starving, but just to fuel our body, guys, that's when we're starting to develop the habits of a skinny or thin person, just like Marna Thal was talking about. And I've mentioned that before to you guys, that sometimes our skinny friends naturally do things like falling asleep without eating their dinner. What happened last night, Becky?
Well, the reason I didn't answer the phone is because I fell asleep at 9, and I fell asleep and I didn't even eat dinner. I was just sleepy and I just wasn't very hungry, right? Good morning. Now, that same thing that Becky's doing as a skinny or thin person is the same situation that maybe your overweight friends never do. You're never going to hear Bob, your overweight buddy, talk about how he fell asleep at 8 and forgot to eat dinner. That just doesn't happen. I notice a lot of big people, they just constantly have this routine where they always eat 3 or 4 meals a day. They always drink 2 or 3 Cokes. They always smoke a pack of cigarettes. You know, whatever bad things can happen, a lot of times the overweight community is taking part in it, right? Now, if you're overweight and you've never smoked or drank in your life, you know, I'm obviously not talking about you. But I'll notice with a lot of people that I meet throughout the years that are overweight, it seems like a crazy amount of them smoke a pack of cigarettes a day. It seems like a crazy amount of them never skip a meal, you know? And they almost have a love affair with food, which I don't think there's anything wrong with, because heck, I love food and you probably love food as well. But you got to keep it in perspective. If you eat food to stay alive, that's great. But if you eat too much food, it starts to kill you. And that's not so great, right? So here's my challenge to you. Why don't you join me? If we mess up the first couple days, sometimes you'll just forget that, oh my God, I'm not supposed to eat after 7:30. But if any of you guys want to do that with me this last 30 or 35 days or so, I think it could be extremely powerful. And even if some of us don't do it, those of us that do could start to leave in the comments, you know, how that's going. Because sometimes we just need one little extra push for the momentum to start taking effect and for the weight to start coming off of our bodies. And here's one thing I'd like for you to ponder, the baby step aspect of it. Could we have done all these little things from day one? Probably not. You got to remember, on day one, I was trying to tell everybody that this is the easiest diet in the world. Because on day one it is, you know. But come day 60, 70, 80, and 90, you obviously want to be in a situation where you can hit your goal. You know, it's just like a basketball team. If you're down by 20 points in the fourth quarter, you can't just keep doing what you're doing and hoping for the best. You got to start clamping down on defense. You got to start fouling the people that are really poor free throw shooters. I don't know if you guys remember Shaquille O'Neal when he used to play basketball. Really great basketball player, right? But he had a situation where teams, it was called hack-a-shack. And what you would do is you would try to foul him so he never was able to score without having to hit free throws. And I remember one particular year, I was super impressed with him because he got sent to the free throw line 13 times during one basketball game, and he managed to make 13 of 13 free throws. Now, did that last forever? No, because for his whole NBA career, I think he only made 1 out of every 2 free throws. He was only about a 50% free throw shooter. And it's funny, as adults, we look at that and say, God, can't you make a free throw? But if you ever shoot a free throw, a lot of times we're not making 50% of them, trust me. That's what amazes me about pro basketball players. You ever watch them in the pregame when they're just shooting the ball? Guys, it's not uncommon for them to make 8 out of 10 shots. What happens in the game is that they're no longer wide open shooting an uncontested shot. In the game, you've always got some guy sticking his hand in your face. And that's why most basketball players shoot between 40 and 50% on their field goal percentage. And then some of the power forwards and centers, the taller players on the team, many times they shoot a little bit over 50%. And it's mainly just because they're closer to the basket, so they're able to hit better high percentage shots. But anyway, the reason I bring up the hack-a-shack is that when the Lakers were really, really good with both Shaq and Kobe, you had to try to use strategy to not only prolong the game, but give yourself a chance to win. So if every time Shaq touched the ball, you fouled him, and he went to the free throw line and only made, let's say, 1, and sometimes he made 0 free throws, right? What happened is, that's a victory. Yes, one of your players got a foul, but if it's one of your scrub backup players, who cares, right? So instead of giving up 2 or 3 points, and you know how basketball is, sometimes you give up a 3-pointer and a foul, and it ends up being 4 points. Well, when you fouled Shaq, you end up giving 1 and sometimes 0 points up. So what happened is a lot of times that was the best way to beat the Lakers. Foul Shaq and hope he misses free throws. Well, that's what we're doing here. We're close to tipping the scale in our favor, and we're running out of time in this 90-day ball game, right? So what you want to do for this last month is really ask yourself, have I given up the sugar yet? I was never able, Jesse, I was never able to give up that darn sugar. Okay, well listen, you haven't been able to give it up for the first 2 months, and I'm not asking you to give it up forever, but do you think you can actually make a push, give yourself a little 30-day challenge, and do you think you can try to eat 0 sugar just for the next month? And when I mean 0 sugar, I don't mean looking at the back of every bag of corn chips to see if there's any added sugars. I mean the traditional foods that we associate with desserts. Can we stay away from the candy? Can we go ahead and ditch the Coke? Even if you don't want to ditch the Coke for the rest of your life, just do it with me for this last month, okay? Your boy Jesse here is not drinking any soda, no high fructose corn syrup drinks, right? No concentrated fruit drinks either. No donuts, nothing sweet. Gave up milk and bananas, not because I'm against dairy or fruit. It's just I really want to give my best effort towards this last month. And if I can eat plain oatmeal instead of a bowl of cereal with a banana in it, I think that's a great way to step up the intensity. Whenever you step up the intensity in weightlifting and stuff, sometimes you have to break your personal best record to do that. We don't have to do that with walking. It's really easy to step up the intensity. You can simply add an extra 15-minute walk in the evening, you know, when the temperatures go down. Why do you say all this, Jesse? Well, if you don't have a 90-day goal, your goal is for life, then you don't have to step it up at all. What you're doing is fine, right? But if you do want to hit this goal like I do, you know, if you're a YouTuber like me and you say, hey, lose 30 pounds in 90 days, and then 90 days rolls around and you still haven't lost but 10 pounds, it kind of makes people shy away from wanting to do your challenge. So I'm doing this because it's very important for the health of the channel that the guru on the channel hits the goal. So I just want to let you know, I don't freak out. I don't look at the scale and say, oh my God, how am I going to lose 20 pounds this last month? I just know that reality is the body has a tendency of not wanting to lose weight, and that doesn't hold forever. For some people, it holds for a couple of weeks. For some people, it's like that for a month or two. And if that's the case, what are we going to do? Just say, oh, okay, screw it, and go right back to donuts and chocolate milk? No, we're going to take it up a notch. So that's my game plan. I'd like for you to not only walk with me a little bit more than normal, but I'd also like for you to go ahead and contemplate the idea of stopping to eat this last month at 7:30. And if there's any other ways you can baby step and take it a little bit more seriously this last month, please do. We got to get our bodies ready for the summer and the swimming pool. And for birthdays and anniversaries, a lot of us have goals. Hey, good morning.
Morning.
How's it going? Hi, puppy. And like that guy, if you have to get a dog to do it, do it. You know, I've had a couple comments through the last month or two, and sometimes people will say, you know what, I haven't started, but I wasn't starting at the beginning, but I've been watching a couple videos and I've started recently. Good for you. Remember, whatever you start, see if you can build upon it. So if you're doing a 15 or 20-minute walk, you know, we're going into another month, whether it's your first month, your second month, or going into your third month like a lot of us. It's time to kind of up the ante. And again, if you're not doing a 90-day challenge, you're just trying to start a walking routine, you know, there's a difference between you upping the ante and me upping it. I have a goal that I have to hit for the channel's health, right? You don't necessarily have to hit a specific number or goal. Just know that at any point, using Kaizen and using baby step methods, you can always up the intensity of the positive stuff you're doing. You can always lower the intensity of the negative stuff you're doing, okay? So in other words, 4 donuts becomes 2, becomes 1, becomes 0. Speaking of which, get ready for work. I will talk to you tomorrow. Have a great day.